Morning. Let's say that you've just received an interview invite and the interview is tomorrow at 9 o'clock and it's 8 p.m. in the night today. Are you screwed? Absolutely not. I believe that preparation is preparation and no amount of preparation is bad preparation. However, what I'm going to tell you in the next few minutes is going to change your life and change the way that you give interviews even when you don't have too much time to prepare. So let's jump right in. The first thing I want to talk about is what interviews are about. Like, what's the basic structure of an interview? What's the purpose? And at least at the Indian School of Business, where I graduated, the purpose is to get to know you as a person and to get to know your fit as a batchmate to the person who's interviewing you. The basic question that we ask ourselves when we're sitting on the panel is this a person that I would want to interact with? Is this a person that I want to do case studies with, to do experiential learning programs with, to even discuss a simple case study in the classroom with, right? The big focus is on being with people who are accountable, who are responsible, who bring in interesting perspectives, and who are humble and grounded. Okay, because we faff a lot. We do screw around a lot in our application sometimes, right? Like, we like to glorify the things that we do, but the interview is your one chance to maybe make an impression that you're being genuine and authentic and actually backing up the stuff that you've written in an application. Now, here are a few common mistakes that people make when going into the interviews. And the first one is, of course, not having any idea how to structure their answers and doing an absolute data dump. Now, you need to understand something. Human beings are cognitively very limited. Like, I believe that we have, if us and golden retrievers are pretty much the same. Our attention spans are really short, and there are only very few things and commands that we actually remember. So it becomes important for you to reduce the cognitive load both on yourself as well as the interviewer to remember different points. Okay, let me make that a little bit more concrete for you, right? Like, let's say we take the question, tell me about yourself. Most people are tempted to go in chronological order, right? They'll be like, I'm working with McKinsey. Before that, I was working with Deloitte. Before that, I was working with Ford. Before that, I was working with BCG. And before that, I graduated from the Indian Engineering College. And before that, so the problem is that you have like 20 or 30 different points which are made in the span of a few minutes. So the person is absolutely not going to be able to understand what the hell you're saying, and what should that person remember about you. It's just too much information. There's an alternative to this which reduces the cognitive load and makes it easier for people to remember you. And that is to structure your answer in threes. What do I mean by that? Well, think about the most common slogans that you've heard, right? Like, let's take the Olympic slogan. It's Citius, Fortius, Altius. That's the Greek version, but the modern version is faster, stronger, higher, or breakfast, lunch, dinner, or life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, morning, afternoon, night. So there's a continuous spectrum of threes, or rather a repetition of threes as a theme in most art, in most philosophy, simply because the artists and the philosophers themselves knew that structuring things in threes makes them more memorable, more easy to retain, and more easy to consume, right? So I encourage you all to maybe structure your answers in threes and to start thinking in threes. So, simple example, if somebody asks you, hey, tell me about yourself, instead of saying, I do this, just say, okay, I work as an engineer. I'm a family man with, 2 kids living in Bhubaneswar, and I like to volunteer at NGOs in my part time. And I've been doing so for 16 years. So, again, the takeaways are very easy, right? You labeled it. You literally said you're an engineer, you're a family man, and you love volunteering. And then you can, of course, give them the chance to deep dive into each one of these, right? So this is where the next concept I'm talking about, which is level 1, level 2, and level 3 answers comes in. Now, what I mean by that is that, let's say that you're on a date with somebody, okay, and they ask you to talk about yourself. If you sit there and try to go into detail about every single thing you do, I can assure you that they're going to lose interest in you very quickly, or they're going to think that you love talking about yourself a lot and not listening to other people. So treat the interview as a two-way conversation, or conversation between you and your friend. If you keep going on and on and on, your friend is bound to interrupt you and say, dude, like, enough, I get it, like, can we pause, can we go back a little bit? So it's the same thing with interviews as well. What I recommend in this situation is that you you basically take some time to figure out what is the level of depth that you want to go to. You have a surface level answer, maybe a slightly deeper answer, and then an absolutely detailed answer depending on the interviewer's line of questioning, whether they want to know or not. This gives them the chance to deep dive into the actual areas they want to listen to, the actual areas they're curious about, rather than you talking on and on and on. How would I structure such an answer? Let me just give an example, right? So again, the same example as last time, which is I'm a family man, I'm an NGO volunteer, and I work at a startup, let's say. So here I say, all right, can you tell me a little bit more about your experiences at the startup? Then I say, okay, I work in X function doing, this is let's say I work in finance, and my job in finance is to do A, B, and C, and I help the company, do X, Y, and Z. So that's a level 2 answer, right? You just talked about what is the result that you're planning to give the company and how you do it through, your knowledge of finance. Then they're going to be like, oh, okay, interesting. Can you tell me a few interesting projects that you've done as part of this? And that's where your level 3 answer and the situation, task, action, result, star format comes in, right? You're leading the interviewer into different levels of depth about your personality and about your work rather than just data dumping on them right from the get-go. The point is not to front load everything. The point is to have a genuine conversation with them as a batchmate. Okay. Now, the next tip that I want to talk about, or rather the next thing that you should be doing as part of your interview, is trying to quantify your answers as much as possible. Now, what do I mean by quantify? There are certain numbers we all remember. Okay, this could be the population number of India, or it could be the percentage urban and rural split. So what I'm trying to say here is that your experiences, your knowledge always benefits from having a few numbers thrown here and there when you're talking about it. The reason is that numbers speak louder than picture and numbers speak louder than words. So how would I want to say it? So I help increase the company's revenue to $3 million. Right now, yes, that is impressive. Maybe you can put an additional number there. I helped increase the revenue by 20% to $3 million in 3 months. Right. So you've put a set of numbers there which provides them a yardstick by which to measure the magnitude of your results, or the awesomeness of your results practically. So just throw in a few numbers, just intersperse a few numbers into everything, as many as you remember. Don't try to force fit them into the conversation, right? Like, just because you know a few numbers, like urban rural split itna hai, socioeconomic split is, age categorization is this and this, therefore I did this. No, I'm not saying go to that level of depth, but I am saying that a few numbers here and there are going to be like points of interest for them, points of curiosity for them to understand more about that particular project. The very last thing, or the very last tip that I want to talk about, is how to take dramatic pauses. I know dramatic pauses sounds a little dramatic, but what I'm trying to convey here is we underestimate not talking in an interview. Okay, we believe that in interviews talk all the time. I believe that the really good interviews are places where the interviewer and the interviewer is allowed to breathe a little bit, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that the interviewers need to remember. They've been, seeing multiple candidates throughout the day. Their brains are probably not working properly at that point in time. And if you're a guy who unfortunately got the evening slot, let's say, then you're even more at a disadvantage in that case, because they're going to be paying even less attention to you. So my suggestion there is to slow down a little bit, to take a pause, to allow them to breathe a little bit. How do you do this without looking really awkward? Well, first of all, when somebody asks you a question, there is absolutely no need for you to immediately answer. Okay, that's not how human interactions work. Human beings need to take some time to think through their answers, right? So let's say I'm asked a question, tell me about yourself. Take a brief 2-second pause, look somewhere else. I'm not saying like completely turn around, but just take a pause as if you're thinking, okay? And you're thinking internally, you're like, okay, how do I structure this answer? I'm going to talk about A, I'm going to talk about B, I'm going to talk about C. I've already practiced this. Then you say, so if I were to tell 3 things about myself, it would be A, B, and C, right? And then you take a pause again. Now, when I say I'm A, I mean that I'm doing X, Y, Z. Okay? And you take a pause again. And you say, in X, I do this. In Y, I do this. In Z, I do this, right? So you're first of all separating your speech or separating your answer into paragraphs by just taking pauses. So if you take an essay document, right, you would have used paragraphs to separate different points, to provide thinking time, to switch from one concept to another, to provide an introduction or prelude to a new topic from the previous topic. It's the same thing with how you deliver answers in the interview as well. um, one simple idea, or one simple idea that I think people need to keep in mind is that you can ask for time. You should always ask for time, right? Like, yeah, I've done consulting case prep. I've given interviews in consulting companies. I got into Deloitte. So every single stage, I've always made sure that whenever somebody asks me a question, I say, oh, okay, that's an interesting question. I'll need a few minutes to maybe think this through, if you don't mind, right? Shamelessly ask for time. It's not a problem. Nobody's going to say, oh, this guy is dumb because he takes too much time. As long as you give a structured and meaningful answer, how does it matter? You're giving them time to recalibrate, you're giving yourself time to recalibrate as well, and there's nothing wrong with that. So with all of these prep tips, we talked about talking in threes, we talked about giving dramatic pauses, and we talked about giving surface level detail and then moving deeper into different answers. What do you really do with this when you have just a few minutes or a few hours to get into the interview? The answer is very simple. Take a notepad, okay, or take a bunch of sticky notes like this, okay, sit down somewhere comfortable and just make quick bullet points on the sticky notes, right? So let's say you're thinking in threes, then you take 3 questions that you're nervous about. Let's say, tell me about yourself, or walk me through your resume, or tell me about your strengths and weaknesses, right? Just jot down 3 simple points, and maybe under those points, 2 or 3 points about certain examples or anecdotes that you can give. Similarly, you take up the surface level answers, right? Then you just try to structure in your mind, okay, how do I structure the surface level answer? Tell me about yourself. Okay, I am A, I'm B, I'm C, right? I'm worker, I'm family man, I am volunteer at an NGO. And then below that, you say, okay, as a worker, I am working in the finance vertical at a beverage manufacturing company. And my job is to ensure that our sales go through on time, whatever it is. Then under Y, let's say it is, I'm a worker, I'm now also a volunteer. So at the NGO, I help old people, and get access to education or health or whatever it is, right? And similarly, as a family man, I'm the father to 2 kids, right? And then maybe you say, okay, under work, I'm going to talk about different projects that I've done. That will be my level 3 answer or level 2 answer. Under volunteering, I'll talk about probably the results that I've achieved, right? Or the number of programs that I've conducted. And then maybe under your family experience, you talk about how you're raising your kids, how you're, what sort of goals and dreams that you have for them, right? And then maybe you go deeper and deeper into everything. Like the L3, the level 3 answer usually never comes through, right? Because there's only like 1 or 2 topics that they're interested about that you want to dive deeper into. So give them the chance. You don't need to worry about most level 3s. So the advantage of the framework that I'm giving you is that you have fewer things to remember for the next day by just simply putting a few bullet points and saying this is the priority answer which they'll probably ask, right? Nothing else they're going to ask me about, but I'll simply mention it as part of my interview experience. Cognitive load goes down, amount of nervousness goes down, right? You just need to remember 2 or 3 bullet points, walk into the interview room confidently and deliver. That's it. So with this, what I'd like to say is, don't get into a situation where you don't have interview preparation. Like that's number one. If you can avoid that situation, avoid it. Nobody wants to purposely walk into the interview with just like 2 hours of preparation. So try to avoid that situation as much as possible. Okay, but in the event that it is unavoidable, try to remember these tips, and I'm pretty sure that you can perform well. In addition, I'm also providing a service where I do mock interviews and essay and interview preparation together. So if you want those services, you want to know a little bit more, like and subscribe to this channel, and my contact details, my LinkedIn profile and my Instagram ID are in the description of this video, along with a few resources that you can use. So yeah, until then, best of luck, and hope to see you as an ex-alum of ISB very soon.